So guys, before I begin, if you can, please subscribe to my other channel, Crimecast. I'll put the link in the description below. I'd appreciate it if you go give it a follow. In the next couple of days, I'll be putting up a video there. As I said, I'll probably be posting once or twice a week on there, but big respect if you can subscribe over there. A gang who tried to smuggle Class A drugs into Britain inside consignments of bananas have been jailed for a total of 140 years. A gang including one of the UK's most wanted men, James Stevenson, who's also known as the Iceman, who's 59 years old, was convicted of conspiracy to import £100 million worth of coke to Scotland from Ecuador. Stevenson, known as the Iceman, was named by the NCA as one of the UK's most wanted men in 2022, 15 years after he was first jailed for organised crime. It came immediately after a separate gang in Kent was sent down for importing and distributing a similar amount of coke, which was seized by police who infiltrated the encrypted messaging platform EncroChat. It follows the UK's largest ever Class A drugs bust. In February, £450 million worth of coke was found concealed in crates of bananas at Southampton Port by the NCA and Border Force. Stevenson and 4 others pleaded guilty mid-trial at a high court in Glasgow, with Stevenson jailed for 20 years for directing the importation of coke and being involved in organised crime through production and supply of street Valium. David Bills-Island, who's 68, Paul Bowes, who's 53, were each sentenced to prison for 6 years, while Gerard Carbin was sentenced to 7 years and Ryan McPhee to 4 years. The court previously heard Border Force officers at the Port of Dover seized 18 consignment of bananas addressed to Glasgow Fruit Market between May and September 2020, and they contained almost a ton of coke. Fruit market trader Bilzan entered a guilty plea to a charge of agreeing to import coke, and Bowes pleaded guilty to being involved in organised crime linked to the production and supply of a Class C drug. These included a string of premises including a resort in Abu Dhabi, in London and in Kent. Carbin, who's Stevenson's stepson, who was also jailed for being involved in organised crime in 2007, and co-accused McPhee, admitted being involved in organised crime through the production of a Class C drug. As you know, the plot was smashed by French law enforcement officers and infiltrated the encrypted EncroChat network in April 2020. Vehicle recovery firm owner Lloyd Cross admitted involvement in the plot before the trial and was also sentenced to 6 years behind bars. The court previously heard Stevenson and Bills-Island, a trader at a Glasgow fruit market, met at a hotel in Alicante in Spain to discuss the plan on February the 14th, 2020, Valentine's Day. Messages suggested Cross and Stevenson met at a park to discuss plans in April 2020, while Bills-Island arranged banana consignments to collude with Cross to use their business to fund the importation of drugs, with recovery vehicles used to deliver and collect cash. The judge was also told a delivery was being arranged for more than 13 million street Valium pills, and during a raid in Rochester in June 2020, equipment capable of producing 258,000 pills per hour was discovered. Stevenson was arrested, released and later fled to the Netherlands, but he was captured there in 2022 and extradited. The day before Stevenson and his associates were sentenced, 7 members of a completely separate gang were jailed at Maidstone Crown Court for more than 90 years after the authorities foiled their own startlingly similar smuggling operation. Members of the Kent gang attempted to swap the coke stored in banana crates for shop-bought fruits, but police were watching their messages as they organised the distribution of the drugs. Between March and December 2021, the organised crime group imported and distributed at least 1.5 tons of coke from Central America, and this gang were also using EncroChat, where they masqueraded under pseudonyms to communicate and arrange the movement of between 30 to 100 kilos of drugs at a time. They then predominantly used hire vehicles to collect and transport the drugs across the UK. Anyway, back to the case at hand, and Jamie Stevenson is believed to have had a bitter fallout with his trusted lieutenant and his stepson, Gerard Carbin, so the animosity was such that the former close criminal allies had to be kept apart during the sentencing hearing today. An insider revealed that there were rumours of a hit being ordered against Carbin, and he had initially been brought from the cells to the dock this morning. There were plans for Carbin, who had sat beside the rest during the last hearing, to be seated away from Stevenson for the sentencing, but he did not show, and the court was temporarily adjourned. The matter was eventually resolved, with it being agreed Stevenson would be sentenced alone and Carbon finally took his place in the dock. A source said a fallout seems to have happened following the guilty pleas last month. Stevenson was on remand in HMP Edinburgh and Carbon in Barlinnie, but word quickly spread he was not happy with his stepson. There were serious concerns that this could spill over in court and police were on red alert. Carbon then seemingly refused to come into the dock, not wanting to be near Stevenson. It was only when it was agreed with the judge that Stevenson would be dealt with separately. Carbon then appeared from the cells. And it was also said in court that Jamie Stevenson had actually sent copies of his own driving license to some major international cartels. Stevenson had basically put his trust in the EncroChat system, but as we know, it got infiltrated by the NCA and others across Europe. So EncroChat, which was almost exclusively used by international kingpins and cost around £1,500 to buy, plus another £1,500 every 6 months to service. The trust that Stevenson and other gangsters across Europe put in EncroChat secrecy is what bore the downfall. Jerry McLean, the National Crime Agency's regional head of investigation, said it's often difficult to gather the evidence to complete the court or a jury that certain individuals are the chief executive, if you like, of crime groups. The cracking of EncroChat allowed us, through their own messaging, show us who was in truly control at any given time and what other may lesser roles of those some accused played in this instance. The NCA's own Operation Phonetic used data from EncroChat to identify criminals to solve murders and tackle the drug trade, with more than 2,000 people jailed in the UK and more still in the pipeline. The platform owners realised it had been compromised by law enforcement in June 2020 and was shut down shortly afterwards. Graham Pearson, the former boss of the Scottish Crime and Drug Enforcement Agency, stressed that Stevenson and other seasoned crime bosses made monumental blunders when they put their faith in EncroChat. He said, "I wouldn't like to have been the salesman for EncroChat." He said, "I think there'll be hundreds of organised crime figures across the globe right now looking for these various salesmen and women who sold them a pup." And thankfully so, because it turned out that EncroChat was the biggest gift in the history of law enforcement. Said very prominent crime figures developed a feeling of comfort was actually their undoing, and they actually used EncroChat in a way to prove their own credentials. Pearson also hailed the efforts of the police officers in Scotland to decipher the evidence gleaned from EncroChat, including the unravelling of who was in the message. He said there was a huge amount of intel required to examine all these encoded entries and make sense of them. He said, so it was like a story you would write in the paper. It was like the Matrix had all been pieced together. All the various people and the nicknames had to be matched, and the dates and times with the events that were known. It was a real piece of professional work on behalf of those engaged in intel, which gave the officers a head start. But the fact that the piece of the jigsaw that was started by Jamie Stevenson and his driver's license was a very good one to start with. So Jamie Stevenson and his co-defendants all admitted, and he was jailed for 20 years at the High Court today. You got David Bilsland, who used the handle Trendy Mutant. You got Lloyd Cross, Shaggy Colt, and right-hand man Gerard Carbon used Special Smith and Lucid Fudge. There was also Ryan McPhee used Fortress Moth, and Paul Bowes used Hollow Butter and Silver Jaguar. So a little bit of background into Mr. Stevenson. So the public first heard Stevenson's name after he was accused of shooting his criminal associate Tony McGovern outside a Glasgow pub in September 2000. Stevenson and McGovern had once been so close they were best man at each other's weddings. The murder charge was later dropped because of lack of evidence. Then in 2004, the Scottish Crime and Drug Enforcement Agency launched Operation Folklore, a 3-year investigation which targeted Stevenson with unprecedented electronic surveillance and forensic financial analysis. He was put into a legal corner. He pleaded guilty to laundering under £1 million worth of drugs and was jailed for 12 years and 9 months. And by 2018, Police Scotland and the NCA had formed an organised crime partnership based at the Scottish Crime Campus in North Lanarkshire. The aim was to take down top-tier criminals, and Stevenson was out of prison and on their list. That's when their big break came after they received intel that a Glasgow fruit merchant, David Bilsland, had links to organised crime and was trying to further his business interests in South America. That's when Operation Pepperoni was launched. And then, this is what happened. David, Bills Island, Paul Bowles and Lloyd Cross were each sent to prison for 6 years. Gerard Carbin got 7 years. Ryan McPhee got 4 years. Detective Chief Superintendent Dave Ferry, Police Scotland's head of organised crime, said the sentencing of Stevenson, Bill Island, Bowles, Carbin, McPhee and Cross following their guilty pleas sends out a clear message that the activities of those who think that they can bring illegal drugs into our communities will not be tolerated. He said, I want to show my acknowledgement for the hard work and diligence shown by the officers who investigated the group and provided the evidence in what was a complex investigation and shows the value of working with our law enforcement partners, including the NCA and those abroad. So guys, here's a new story coming in from the streets of the UK. It's your boy GT. Keep it locked, keep it real.